preparing to live stream. I'm giving you second by second updates here.
Thank you so much.
It's still loading. And we are officially live on YouTube right now.
Okay. Hey, everybody. This is the Tartle at the Duke class showcase for my class, Writing and Reading the Humorous Personal Narrative. We have 9 great readers tonight, and I will be saying all of this again soon. But we will be getting started here in about 5 minutes. We're going to let other audience members come join in, and that's that. So we will be back here in 5. Hey everybody, I'm Gina and this is Tartle at the Duke. This is our class showcase. So we have 9 great readers. They all took Tartle class, writing and reading the humorous personal narrative. So it was a 4-week class. They worked on one piece the entire time, and this is their final essay or story that they'll be sharing tonight.
Hey, everybody.
So, oh my
I'm
God,
Gina,
hold on.
and this is
One
Tartle at the
second.
Duke.
I am.
This is
All right, everybody. See what happened there was I didn't mute my YouTube, so we had a little technical glitch, but we're back. Anyways, I'm very excited for this show. They have worked so hard, and they are so funny. So yes, that's 9 readers. We will have a brief intermission after the 5th reader, and I will let everybody know when that is. But let's just get it started. Let's give it up for our first reader tonight is Danielle Bluford.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gina. I'm so excited to kick it off. This will be fun. So this is called Accidentally Devastating. Do you know what it sounds like to hear the literal demise of the remaining few polar bears we have left on Earth? I do. It's that precise, crisp yanking open of a fresh Ziploc sandwich bag, ready and willing to hold your Fig Newtons. It's like a bloody scream for my ears. For most, it's a quick, unconsidered action, but it's used as something I take as a personal attack toward my imminent destruction and doom. College is where I learned of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, a huge mass of our trash and plastic larger than twice the size of Texas. Just sitting, floating in the ocean, soaking up the sun like a TikTok star on spring break in the Bahamas. I imagine all the Mott's apple juice boxes I drank as a kid, floating in this mass, still intact with their shiny cardboard packaging and cartoon-like red apples on the front, gossiping about me. I also see remnants of my chosen after-school snack, Dunkaroos, their packages bobbing up and down, the oddly shaped crevices that once held chocolate frosting, decaying with a pungent stench of bird poop, seawater, and despair. They haunt me. I see them in my nightmares and I can't get over it. I've been so wasteful. I've been human. What I mean when I talk about my own personal doom is that fish and other sea creatures end up eating these little pieces of plastic from our trash, microplastics they're called. And then I eat the fish, where after my farewell glass of red wine, I will vomit out all of my organs into a massive heap and die. I imagine the tiny plastic pieces on some kind of mad killing spree adventure throughout my body in a sick, new age version of Disney Channel's Five Goes West plastic betrayal. They will collectively be voiced by Jenny Slate, and she will scream in her high-pitched tone as I outwardly wince in pain and die on the cold tile bathroom floor, sooner rather than later. Currently, my mom and stepdad have taken me in during quarantine, and mostly we are buds. But they grew up in a different generation, and out of convenience, they are big fans of the plastic bottle, plastic wrap, and the infamous plastic bag. They are truly kind and compassionate people, though they make up the throwaway generation. As children of the 1950s that experienced the Great Depression, everything at home was mostly utilized, reused, and cherished. Once a week, my parents had their milk delivered to their respective homes in Detroit in a milk chute, brought in reusable glass bottles, left by a little man in a white apron, donning what I can only assume would be an adorable hat. I envision him waving my grandmother hello through the window, taking the empties with him on the way out. Then, single-use plastic was invented and all sensibility was trashed. The convenience of using a sandwich bag became an endless pursuit. Storage for a half-eaten grapefruit, loose one-a-day vitamins, other plastic bags. Both parents prefer to use more plastic bags in a day than I would in my entire lifetime. It's wild. Plastic bags will last 1,000 years in the landfill or ocean, which is much longer than me or any of my beloved pairs of shoes, or even my distant relatives will survive. And this gives me great pause. It should give us all great pause. There's nothing that makes me think more about my mortality than a plastic bag, because I always know it will outlive me. Most nights, I eat dinner with my mom and stepdad, where post the tantalizing dessert course of diet red jello, I become a little plastic bag Nazi, trying quickly to put all the food away in reusable containers before they grab a bag. Don't use the Ziploc, I exclaim as his hands find the Costco-sized box in the cupboard holding infinite plastic bags. One day, these will each be the end of days for a school of cod. I've got a container right here, I shout, with pleas of utter desperation and a wetness in my eyes that is a prequel to tears, as I quickly utilize the tongs to smush the steamed broccoli into a deli container, then into the fridge before any words of dismay can be uttered. I do this nightly. It's both exhausting and exhilarating, and it wears on me. But I am saving the salmon. I do it for the salmon. No one else knows this is a competition, but I do. And most often, I win. I win for the day, I win for eternity, unless I get a phone call or have a Zoom meeting or a book club and have to dart away. Bad things can happen when I'm not looking. When I catch my mom using a Ziploc bag, I immediately question her. Was this necessary? I remark, with a dual concerned and devastated tone of voice. I glare at the freezer-sized plastic bag now holding 1/16 of a garlic clove. I imagine a day when all the trash in the ocean wipes out the whole shoreline of Venice Beach, removing an entire species of seagulls, a deranged man handing out religious pamphlets, and a massive group of wealthy private school families on a catered cleanup fundraiser picnic. You could have used a container, I snark, barely waiting for a response, while I wag my finger at both her and the bag as I whisper eerily, never again. She knows I will make her reuse it. I will make her salvage it until it's basically shredding and tearing itself to smithereens. This is the only point at which it can be trashed. She will then look me in the eye, put her arms up guiltily and say, you weren't watching me here, but I'll reuse it, I swear. And I know she will at least try. Between shared laughs and her uncanny ability to torture me, I try to forgive, but am now clearly despondent. Another unnecessary bag used, and our collective ends have all drawn nearer. I know she cares about fish on some level, though, because she does enjoy a good tuna sandwich. And as far as I know, she really likes being alive. One cold day during Q3 of quarantine, a friend and I went for a socially distanced walk to acknowledge both the beauty and the horribleness of this century. We literally and figuratively walked in circles. At the end of our fleeting journey, we got frozen yogurt in a styrofoam cup. Styrofoam, plastic's much older, much meaner, and more vicious second cousin. This stuff never breaks down, but I did, right there at the counter. I trembled as I gave the gal my order, unsure if I was actually going through with it, simultaneously dreading and drooling at the checkout as I fantasized about eating my beloved flavor pistachio with a plastic spoon, at the expense of a jellyfish dying. The cashier literally had to wake me from my dissociative state right there. Ma'am, she tapped on the sneeze guard. Do you want any toppings? Today, they're free, she declared a little too eagerly for my comfort. No, that's okay, I replied timidly and with deep, deep shame, knowing I didn't dare to serve anything tasty on top. It looked kind of sad without, but was the easiest and most instant way to punish myself. I slid her my credit card and took the cup from the counter, feeling a profound regret for basically initiating the execution of Crush the Turtle from Finding Nemo. I have high standards, and sometimes I can't even live up to them. The froyo did hit the spot, though. As we sat outside, shivering at opposite ends of the bench, I was pleasantly surprised at how quickly my inner thoughts of concern for the polar bears diminished with every bite that I took. You break it, you buy it, I thought, as I leaned further into the truth of the world falling apart due to actions from my own hands. When it's just about certain nothing in the world can get worse than it already is, giving your money to the least deserving, highly polluting froyo place on the block is, to me, the perfect example of being human and being alive. It's forever hard to navigate the right and wrong of your actions when your favorite flavor is in stock and you can simply toss out the spoon and look the other way. Thank you.
Yes, let's please give it up for Danielle Bluford. Clap in the chat. That was so funny. Thank you, Danielle. The idea that plastic bags will outlive us is something now I will never forget. So Great work. Thank you. Okay, we are ready for our next reader, and let's please give it up for Haley Palmer.
Hey, everyone. All right. I never wanted to prove myself to anyone quite as much as the bee expert who came to present to my whole elementary school. My second grade class stored pencils and flashcards inside of our desks, traveled down the paper mache rainforest hallway, bright greens and rich browns towering above us, and gathered in the gym. We sat crisscross applesauce in straight rows on the ground, teachers sitting like royalty on cafeteria chairs arranged around the perimeter of the room. They watched us carefully, ready to condemn any misbehavior with a shh or a reminder to listen with respect, which they did by flashing a sign language L combined with a sign language R, our school's signature disciplinary hand gesture. The addition of the R to the more iconic L was pretty subtle, so it kind of just looked like they were calling us losers anytime we engaged in side conversations or cut in line. My 7-year-old heart loved nothing more than a stern, sobering lecture from a respectable adult, so I was already sold on listening with respect to whatever was presented. It was to these assemblies I owed my ability to stop, drop, and roll, and to yell, "This is not my mom or dad," if anyone attempted to kidnap me in the grocery store. Apparently, if you just screamed your head off during a kidnapping, onlookers might continue to politely mind their own business, so you had to be pretty straightforward with them if you expected any help. This is not my mom or dad. I hadn't had an opportunity to try any of these life-saving tools yet, but something deep inside of me said not to worry. I'd have the chance to save my own life sometime very soon. The adults in my life were unenthusiastic about my commitment to safety at all times. My mom had refused to buy me the unfolding rope ladder that I had requested to escape my second-story bedroom window in case of emergency, and it seems to this day that no one has ever really fully recovered from the months I said, "bad touch," whenever someone tried to hug me or click in my seatbelt. The presenter who had taught us bad touch used too many damn euphemisms, and I decided, unclear as I was on the concept, to go ahead and kind of use it whenever. Better to be safe than, well, anything. When I was in middle school, my mom did agree to create a code message with me if I ever needed to call home and secretly alert her that I was feeling unsafe while babysitting. I had not yet started babysitting, but I already had a hunch that it would make me feel unsafe. We decided the secret message would be, "Aunt Jeannie is coming to visit." Aunt Jeannie is my aunt from Montana, and she always dresses in simple earth tones and cans all of her own produce for winter. She reminds me of Laura Ingalls Wilder. But from my mom's point of view, Aunt Jeannie is her ex-husband's self-righteous older brother's know-it-all wife. So yeah, she said, if you call and tell me Aunt Jeannie is coming to visit, I'll definitely know something is wrong. This particular afternoon in the gym, I craned my head trying to find my perfect visual window to see the bee expert. He talked about bees for a long time before anything he said really struck me. I was far less interested in science as an extracurricular than in science to save your life. My mind was yanked back to the present when, through all of the extracurricular bee information, he abruptly switched into life-saving mode, saying, "And I see some of you would be safe if you were swarmed by bees right now." My eyes bulged. People who work with bees have to wear white, so some of you would be safer than others. Panicked, I looked down at my windsuit. Bright white and bold 90s purple. The hoodie was cut diagonally from right shoulder to left hip, half safe and half my favorite color that was now a betrayal. The pants were fully purple, so my lower half was fucked. I hoped I could climb my escape ladder with horribly injured legs. Before I knew it, I was up from crisscross applesauce to my knees like one of the hyper kids in my class who couldn't keep his shit together. I was shifting my body furiously so my right shoulder faced the bee expert. See, I've got some white on. Please, tell me it's enough. Tell me I'm not walking around in the world like an idiot, fully unprepared to deal with bees. Before this moment, my Nike windsuit was my favorite outfit. I like to wear it with a ponytail, which made me feel like Sporty Spice. Also, the windsuit confidently swished when I walked, alerting all the monsters in my closet when I was entering my room, which enabled them to quickly hide while I continued to politely ignore their looming presence. When I didn't wear swishy clothing, I sounded off a few claps when I entered my room to alert the crew of monsters. We had an agreement. I didn't come in unannounced, and they never actually showed themselves to me. And it was an entirely cordial relationship. In my elementary school years, I'd cultivated the attitude of a competent Marine, staying ready, staying vigilant, and enjoying lectures from qualified superiors. The adults in my personal life barely seemed like adults at all. Still no fold-up escape ladder, so someone had to be in charge. On my nights off from working on a fire plan for my mom's house and brainstorming strategies to help my dad stop smoking, Jim, I would kick back crisscross applesauce with a jewel-tone Nutrigrain bar, red or blue, no green, please. And I talked my mom through the proper way to break up with one of her Brians. Swing set Brian, low voice Brian, fuzzy dashboard Brian. My mom fretted over how to call it off with Brian with the same frantic energy that I brought to safety planning. Haley, I don't want to tell him to his face. I can't. It'd be like so weird. Do you think I have to? Or do you think it'd be okay just to stop answering his calls and avoid the free weight section of the gym? Just tell him to his face, Mom. Rip the Band-Aid off. Anyway, have you thought any more about deciding on a post-fire family meeting spot? Neither of us considered the other's topic quite as important as our own, but each of us was willing to let the other one indulge for a little while. What are friends for? The rub with the bee expert was that he didn't even bring any real bees. I was working my ass off trying to will this man to approve of me or even give me a chance to show up in the right goddamn clothes, and then he's all talk. It was nothing like the fire expert who actually set up a small fire reenactment in the school's back parking lot, and then we got a chance to practice crawling through. It didn't matter much which clothes you were wearing that day, though I would recommend at least a skirt. It was scary, and it was fair, and I still know in a real-life fire situation that I have to tap the door handles to see if they're hot before pulling them open, screaming my head off, and running for my life. All anxietied up, but nowhere to go, I waited for the end of the bee expert's talk and for my class's turn to be dismissed from the gym. We wandered back through the rainforest hallway. I looked up, mesmerized by the bright greens and the oranges, rooted by rich browns, and even flecked with some bold 90s purple. The usual bright white cinder block wall, barely visible at all. Thank you.
Let's get up for Haley Palmer. That was so great. Thank you so much, Haley. The idea that nobody recovered from you yelling bad chutch is very, very funny. So thank you for sharing that. That was great. So our next reader is the one, the only Katrina Sly. Give it up for Katrina.
Okay. The only two people I know that have gotten into fights on planes are my father and myself. I like to scream and shout that the apple has fallen far from the tree, but the older I get, the more obvious it becomes that the apple didn't even make it to the ground. It's stuck in the branches somewhere. We were over in Nevada when the middle-aged man next to me broke our silence. This is my armrest. I would have shared it with you, but you keep pushing me. For hours, I had been floored that this man wouldn't let me push him out of my space. It started with his elbow over the edge and in my side, but at that point, we were pressed so tightly against each other, fighting for leverage over the shared armrest. It would have felt less intimate if I had just given him a hand job before takeoff and turned away with my dignity intact and his semen squeezing out of the sides of my clenched fist. It's not your armrest, it's in the middle. It is my armrest. Look here, it's on my side of the seat. I followed his fingers with my eyes. I understood what he said, but I still disagreed. The two middle armrests, at best, belonged to nobody. I grew up witnessing my father's temper tantrums, and I knew right now I was in the middle of my very own. I remembered a time my dad forced a car on the freeway to miss their exit because they had done something to piss him off, all while I was in the back seat soaking up personality traits the way a forgotten sticker collects hairs at the bottom of your purse. In a break from our embrace, my seat neighbor opened up a newspaper. He didn't open up the paper like you would on a plane that continues to push natural selection into making shorter people. He opened the newspaper the way you would open a paper on a train in 1945, back when women would stand so that men could spread their legs and dry their balls out after a hard day of work. As the paper lay halfway across my lap, Deranged and without a care, I popped it closed. He leaned forward and quietly rested his head in his hands, both of us exhausted from the situation we found ourselves in. It was then that I noticed his lap was covered with crumbs, something I debated pointing out, but ultimately I kept to myself. Thoughts floated around my head, and I realized then that I didn't have my headphones in. We'd been in the air for hours, but I was so fixated on this man, I hadn't touched any of the things I brought onto the plane with me. Last summer, I had another Jesus, you are your father moment. I've never read the Bible or been to church, but the only college class I've ever taken was a literature study of the New Testament, so I'm familiar with the main characters. I walked into the kitchen of my apartment in New York to be alone. I wasn't having fun, and I can only pretend to have fun for so long before my facade slips. I become like dog poop in the middle of the carpet in the hot sun, silently but obviously stinking up the whole room. Starting to clear the dishes from our night, I saw the blender Rebecca had used earlier that day. I could see the hardened layers of mango, banana, and vodka. Something that would have taken seconds to rinse out now needed to be vigorously scrubbed. My shoulders hurt with frustration, the same way they did when I was growing up and had to learn new things. It took me a couple months into our lease to realize Rebecca didn't know how to clean. I had lived with messy people before, but I had never lived with someone who didn't understand the actual mechanics of cleaning. There's no way she meant to put the bowls facing up, I thought to myself once again, as I opened the dishwasher and rearranged the dishes. It would only take unloading the dishwasher one time to understand why you put containers upside down. Has she never unloaded the dishwasher? I asked myself as I dumped another cup of water in the sink. Do you think she needs glasses? I attempted to casually bring it up to our third roommate. I had met Rebecca working a trade show in Las Vegas, but Jason was her childhood best friend. I figured he might have some insight if there was a medical issue at play. He understood exactly what I was getting at, but said her eyes were fine. I eventually came to accept that living with Rebecca was like living with a toddler. She brought a lot of fun and love to the table, but her fingers were always going to be at least a little bit sticky. As I washed the dishes, I was silent. Kat, do you want any help? She said as she entered the kitchen with more empty glasses. No, I'm okay. I just want to clean. Do you want a hug? She asked, stepping closer to me. No, I don't want to be touched right now, I said, thinking about soaking the blender before starting on the other dishes. She went to bed, but I could tell that I had hurt her feelings. You have an angry energy sometimes, but then you say you're okay. I could tell you were mad, Rebecca said the next afternoon, as we sat by the river and drank vodka smoothies. I was angry, but I think I was also tired and needed some space, I said. I had never felt like it was my place to tell her she didn't know how to clean up. But it was clear now that biting my tongue wasn't acting like the sealed lid for my feelings I thought it was. You can ask for space in a nicer way than saying you don't want me to touch you. My whole life, my dad had been angry out loud, and I didn't realize I could silently create the same environment. My mom tries to spare my feelings when we talk about it. You really are a lot like him. I'm scared to have so much of him inside of me. I've seen how things go, and I know how we make other people feel. I've watched my dad be technically right, but look wrong about a lot of things. Who would use all these dishes? My dad says out loud. Who wouldn't rinse out the blender after using it? I say in my head. Our kitchens are clean and we are alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrina. That was amazing. Thank you. Let's please give it up. What an ending. Wow, that was great. I hope everybody is enjoying themselves so far. We've got a lot of people watching. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We have 2 more readers until we take a little break. So let's please welcome our next reader, Kenneth Yoder.
The best career advice I ever got was from actor Kurtwood Smith. He said to me, Kenneth, I'm going to give you some advice. If you want to be a filmmaker, I recommend you learn anything at all about film. He didn't say that I should learn more about film or that I should broaden my knowledge of film. He said that I should learn anything at all about film. Now, for those of you that don't know Kurtwood Smith, he played the dad, Red, from that 70s show, and he also played the bad guy in RoboCop, which means that he's fatherly but in an 80s villain sort of way. It was fair advice, if harsh, but in his defense, he had given me every possible opportunity to make an intelligible contribution to this conversation. Plus, I was the one who said that my entire aspiration in life was to be a filmmaker, which is big talk. Yeah, but in my defense, I never went to film school. All right, and driving Kurtwood was the first bona fide experience I had in the film industry. All of this is to say that I didn't know shit about shit. Now, it was surreal to have him sitting next to me, physically restrained by way of a seatbelt bolted to the chassis of a new 2004 Chrysler Town & Country that I was legally responsible for. My two goals that morning were, one, to not crash the van, killing actor Kurtwood Smith, and two, to not embarrass myself. So far, I was 1 for 2 with plenty of time left on the clock. The filming location was deep in the Chicago suburbs, and there he was in flesh and blood, taking the easy way out by asking just enough pointed questions to get me to do all the talking. Well, where are you from there? He started. Nebraska, I admitted. You make your own films? I do, I whispered, shy to elaborate, considering the Nebraska shame I was already sitting with. He poked again. Well, what's your favorite movie? Well, that's hard to say, I said, swallowing the obvious truth that it's Happy Gilmore. He continued to prospect in this way, hoping to find pay dirt that would allow him to finally relax and let my words do all the work. One of his favorite movies was Citizen Kane. Had I seen that? No. Cool Hand Luke? No. The Godfather? Nope. But, I had been meaning to see that one, which I think at least deserved a nod of appreciation. Nothing. My knuckles got wider on the steering wheel, my palms got wetter, and he sensed that I was starting to panic. And as I would eventually learn through the course of my career, whenever a famous person is strapped to a 4,000-pound hunk of iron screaming down the highway, piloted by a starstruck or nervous PA, they protect their life with the best weapon they have: personal charm and charisma. So, Kenneth, tell me, what genre of film are you thinking about working in? My grip on the steering wheel loosened and color came back into my knuckles as I blurted out, comedy, with zero comedic timing. Oh, yeah, comedy. Yeah, well, you must know Alexander Payne, Nebraska guy. Off my blank smile, he clarified, he's a comedy director. From Omaha? Did Citizen Ruth? Election? About Schmidt? All these films shot in Nebraska. About Schmidt had Jack Nicholson in it. You must have seen that on the news or something, right? This was his final offer, but I couldn't seal the deal. So he drew a heavy breath and exhaled the words, anything at all about film. Now, in my experience, people only bother to tell you the harsh truth if they care about you deeply or if they care about you not at all. Given that Kurtwood had resting 80s villain face, I chose to believe that it was tough love, which meant that now Kurtwood Smith was my mentor, whether he knew it or not. The ride was mostly silent after this, and as I pulled up to his moho, which is film slang for motorhome, Kurtwood leaned toward me, extending his right hand over his torso toward me as if he was trying to shake my hand. And I'll tell you, my hand sprung up faster than any gunslinger I had ever seen. Kurtwood's hand, shocked into complete stillness, hung in midair, our eyes locked, and my crooked cowboy smile caused my left eye to squint and damn near shut. And then Kurtwood glanced down at the now half-empty bottle of Evian that I had so dutifully provided at the beginning of our ride. I was great at my job. Of course, it instantly occurred to me that this was not a handshake moment. He was simply reaching for that, again, extremely thoughtful bottle of water. But nevertheless, here I was in a handshake standoff with a choice to make. Should I retreat my hand and kindly apologize for the misunderstanding, or should I insist that this handshake be settled man to man? Later this day, I was telling the story to the costume stylist, Mim, as she worked out of the back of her red 1993 Volvo station wagon. The color of the car matched the color of her hair, and this, combined with the ravages of middle age and a cute snorty laugh, conspired to make sure that, snorty laugh made me sure that she had to be a practicing nudist in her off time. When I admitted to her that I never went to film school, she said, "Fuck film school. I'm putting you through Screaming Mimi's film school. Full scholarship, bitch." And unlike many people in Hollywood, she followed through on her promise and arrived to set the next day with 3 banker boxes brimming over with VHS tapes. The Red, White, Blue trilogy, Rashomon, The Big Night, Playtime, Breathless, 400 Blows, 8.5, Brazil, Cinema Paradiso, cinematic heavy-hitting shit. And every single one of Alexander Payne's movies was in that box, which felt maybe like her and Kurtwood were in cahoots. I'll never know. That whole show, every moment I could steal to go justify hanging in wardrobe to chat with Mim about movies, I did. She helped me begin to understand that in the real masterpieces, every single frame of this film is working to manipulate our senses in such a way as to make us empathize fully with the souls on screen. And fun fact, she actually worked on Citizen Ruth and knows Alexander Payne. Her colleague took a shit in his office. And this trivia would prove very helpful during tonight's drive home with Kurtwood. Which, speaking of, why didn't I mention to him that I actually did know shit about Westerns? That actually, I knew quite a bit about them. That my dad was my original film school mentor, also unwitting, and he taught me from a strict curriculum of VHS tapes located in a laminated wood cabinet in his bedroom right next to the makeshift shrine of pool trophies. Eventually, DVDs got into the mix, so Dad had to buy one of those DVD VHS combo televisions which sat on top of the laminated wood cabinet, some pool trophies having to be moved to make room. The whole operation was in one corner across from his twin-sized bed. He and my mom slept in separate rooms when he smelled like cigarettes and Old Milwaukee beer, but they slept in the same room when he smelled like cigarettes, Old Milwaukee beer, and Jack and Coke. So I didn't understand this at the time. It was just a thing. Now on Sundays in Lincoln, Nebraska, my personal movie theater, Dad's twin-sized bed, would screen triple features such as Red River, Rio Bravo, and The Searchers. It was a John Wayne forward movie collection containing titles like True Grit, Rooster Cogburn, and The Shootist. Rooster Cogburn is the sequel to True Grit and a superior film in many ways, in my humble opinion. And The Shootist, The Shootist is an unimpeachable cinematic triumph. I wondered, had Kurtwood seen The Shootist? Should I ask him, or should I land this handshake? It was John Wayne's last movie, and it's a story about a gunslinger who's dying of cancer, butt cancer. And instead of dying a painful and slow butt cancer death, he decides to go out in a blaze of glory. Now, John Wayne, the actual problematic human being, John Wayne, was dying of butt cancer during the making of this movie, which adds a layer of profundity to the whole movie-going experience. Now, my dad always drank 2 Old Milwaukees at a time. One he kept in the freezer, and one he kept in his hand, which made the screenings very pausey. He'd work his way down a quarter of a can, pause the movie, get up to swap out for an ice cold one. Plus, my mom made him smoke in the bathroom, so he'd pop out for a smoke before coming back to press play. These intermission hostage situations were my original film school, watching a scene or two from a movie, then having it pause for 5 minutes with nothing to do but sit there and think about it, consider it, analyze it, not purposefully, but just sort of as a natural course of my reality. And since we watched the same films over and over and over again, it nudged me to become aware of new details each time. At first, I would notice the mistakes. Why was the fancy lady wearing a pearl necklace in one angle, but it totally disappears in another angle? or a glass of whiskey that in one angle is almost empty, but in another, it's full. How is this possible? And also, how can actors drink so much damn beer and whiskey? My dad gave me a sip of beer one time and I couldn't take all those burny bubbles. So at this point in the story, I can only assume you're wondering why my dad slept in a twin-sized bed. It's because he was only 4'3" tall. His short stature made all those pool trophies more implausible, but he was good enough to go pro. Never did. And he never taught me pool neither, because he said to be really good at something, like really good, you have to spend all your time with the people who are most passionate about the thing you want to be good at, which meant that if you want to be good at pool, real pool, drunk pool, you had to hang around all the dumb shits that hang around pool halls. And that's a real dumb shit thing to do. So if anyone ever asks me again, I got to remember to say that The Shootist is probably my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie because it's not my favorite movie because it's such a great movie. It's good for sure, but I would say it's my favorite because it permanently branded me. You see, okay, every time me and my dad watched The Shootist, we'd sit there on his twin-sized bed, two children-sized human beings dangling their little children-sized feet off the side. One of us drunk enough to tell the other that if he ever got diagnosed with cancer, he was going to blow his brains out. His words, not mine. He wasn't going to do that bullshit chemo, and he wanted me to know, sort of as a heads up, like somehow the constant repetition of the story would better prepare me for it. He'd tell me how he watched his daddy die of cancer, and it's such a ruthless and painful disease that he wanted to be put down, just like cowboys do to their horses if they break a leg or catch an arrow. And eventually I did watch my dad die of cancer, not a shotgun blast, because when the diagnosis came, it also came up that life insurance don't pay out on suicide. So he cowboyed up and he took the ride. A blaze of glory in a decrepit, painful slow motion. As an adult, I stood in witness during the infinitely long 45 seconds or so of his actual passing. The whole process took place in that same twin-sized bed and kicked off by him pointing at the window that was right next to the DVD VHS combo thing. At first, he drew big circles in the air with his index finger, but slowly they got smaller and faster and smaller and faster, punctuated with a kazoo slide whistle sound that he made between his tongue and front teeth. It's offensive to me how unceremoniously nature reclaims its vessel. Of course, there's no movie that can prepare you for what actually goes down, the details. Our family does cremation because it's the cheapest, which means that now dad sits there on the kitchen shelf in a black cardboard box that the funeral joint gives you if they fail to upsell you. I never told Kurtwood any of this, by the way, and eventually he did shake my hand. And over the course of the next 28 mornings, eventually we got to be friendly enough to where he bought me a copy of Red-Headed Stranger, because we got to talking about our common love of Westerns, which spun off into a whole tangent about country music, which eventually I didn't know shit about that either. I mean, who is from Nebraska, claims to love country music, but hasn't even heard of the Red-Headed Stranger? Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Yoder. That was really, really good. Let's everybody clap, give him a hand. Really powerful, really funny. Thank you so much for sharing. Great. Okay, well, let's give it up for our next reader. We have Megan McGuire.
Hello. Apologies in advance. I just had to lock my cat in the bathroom, so hopefully this goes well. This is the nail salon. I often gazed through the window displays of nail polish at Elizabeth's Nails on my way to pick up rentals of Monk on DVD from Barton Gregg's DVD Explosion. May it rest in peace. But I never dared enter and lay my grubby, hangnail-ridden hands on their pristine white countertops. When I was 18, however, I had my nails done for the first time. In my mind, a manicure was something you do on your first day of law school after running into your ex-boyfriend and his new fiance. It's where you meet a new friend who loves the UPS guy whose nose she will eventually break. And it's where you lead an impromptu but highly choreographed routine about sexily picking up a pen in a scene about female solidarity. But apparently, it's also something you do the night before prom. Since middle school, I surrounded myself with a group of friends who were weird in a John Green novel sort of way. We were a mishmash of theater kids and band kids, lanky cross-country runners, and compulsive overachievers. We didn't care what boys thought. Okay, we said we didn't care what boys thought. We weren't doing drugs, and we wouldn't even know where to look for them. We didn't need curfews because we wanted to be at home at a reasonable time anyway. At the center of my senior year of high school was a history teacher, a man who was absolutely horny for Alexander the Great and Napoleon Bonaparte. And in an ode to his heroes, he was on a warpath against me. He called me a stress kitten once when I asked for clarification on homework. I've looked up this term since to see if I was right to feel gross about it, and I only found articles about how to soothe your new cat's anxiety. Often, he'd turn from his notes on the chalkboard to ask me point blank, "Is this making sense to you, McGuire?" "Yes," I'd say. "Don't lie to me. I hate it when women lie to me," he'd say. This felt like something he needed to work out on his own. A few days after I took his midterm exam, he approached me in the hallway after school, holding his hands out to pretend to choke me before turning to my friend Michelle and asking, "Can I borrow McGuire for a second?" As I recall this moment, I watch myself like I'm watching a sorority slasher film, yelling, "Don't follow him, you dumb bitch!" But I followed him to his classroom where he showed me my exam with a 69% written in Crayola marker on the top. He waved the packet in my face, shouting, "Look at this!" My body's response was, "Shut it down." I had near constant abdominal pain, like a fist tightening around my insides. I'd wake up at 2:35 a.m. to waves of nausea and a desire to review my readings for the next day. After a series of inconclusive stool and blood tests, I found myself downing a king-sized bottle of Miralax cut with yellow Gatorade to prep for a colonoscopy over my spring break. At the hospital, I shared an elevator with another colonoscopy patient who, based on how he swayed, had mixed his Miralax with vodka. "What floor are you going to?" he asked as he pressed the button. "Same as you," I said. He may have been drunk, but this dude was still perceptive as hell. He knew what happened on that floor. "Are you getting a camera up your butt too?" But even with that very camera up my butt, there was no diagnosis. I declined invitations from my friends in favor of spending Saturday nights reading about the failures of the Treaty of Versailles. I backed out of plans, citing my growing collection of symptoms. When we did hang out, I was irritable and contradictory for the sake of it. In the middle of a conversation about Disney princesses, I cut off Michelle's heartfelt defense of Rapunzel to announce that I no longer liked Disney princesses because they're sexist portrayals of women. 6 months later, I'd be blasting Let It Go with every 5-year-old in the world. That night at Elizabeth Snail's, I was the only one of my friends without a prom date, which somehow managed to be the worst thing that happened to me that year. I lifted my head up for the first time in months and realized that while I'd been in the trenches, my friends had been living life. They had made out with boys they weren't Facebook official with and were attending parties where the main activity was drinking beer instead of playing sardines. As the open-toed shoes crowd got pedicures, the rest of us sat in the waiting area, flanked by the armies of nail polish in their tight, straight lines. My friends texted their prom dates who were on a masculine pre-prom field trip while we got our nails done. Vivian showed Maddie pictures from her date. She giggled the performative giggle that you do when you want someone to ask, "What's so funny?" I took the bait. "Oh," Vivian said, "all the guys are go-karting and texting us pics." She leaned back towards Maddie. As Vivian whispered about how her prom date was in love with her and she only liked him, the voice in my head crescendoed. "Nobody likes you, Megan. No one wants you here. You're such a stupid bitch." An image popped into my head like a video ad on a recipe website, out of nowhere and impossible to turn off. I imagined myself walking over to the walls and walls of OPI nail polish and grabbing them one by one and smashing them on the floor, a rainbow of rage at my feet. When I was 3, my brother's teacher gave me a small bottle of bright red nail polish. I can guarantee you it's redder than the color you're thinking of right now. Seriously, redder than that. My mittened toddler hands couldn't hold on tight enough to my most prized possession. The bottle plummeted to the ground and shattered on the pavement, leaving a splatter of blood red nail polish, a tiny casualty. That's what I wanted everyone to see as the nail polish hit the linoleum at Elizabeth's Nails. I can't remember if I wanted to shout, "Pay attention to me!" but that feels very on brand for me. I imagined the total shock on my friends' faces. They would look at each other like, "Is Megan okay?" I wondered if they'd leap into action to stop me or just sit there dumbfounded. How long would it take the staff to kick me out or force me to scrub the floor with non-acetone nail polish remover? Would my friends be worried about me or would they keep giggling? I wanted to cause destruction. I wanted to create a scene. I wanted to be unignorable. I had a year's worth of anger decaying my insides, and I wanted to direct it somewhere. Instead, I slipped my watch off my left wrist and stretched the band taut between my hands. The metal clasps dug into the pads of my thumbs as I pulled harder. When I was 23, I had my nails done for the second time. My friend Katie and I were wandering around Lakeview after brunch and decided to go in. I couldn't tell you the name of the salon or where it was. It was definitely on Clark Street or Broadway or maybe Halsted. It was some Sunday. The next morning, I would ride the train downtown and open up the office. I'd make coffee and organize the conference rooms. A handful of coworkers would comment on my nails as I rested my chin on my hand at the reception desk. I stood in the waiting area and scanned the shelves before picking a grayish purple. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was great. Let's everybody give her a round of applause. And if you hear banging upstairs, that's my neighbors. They're getting ready for bed. So anyways, you guys, this has been great. We are going to take a brief intermission. It'll be 5 minutes, and then we will have the rest of our show. So go to the bathroom, get a drink, do what you got to do. We will be back here at 8:02 Chicago time. That's Central Standard Time, and we will see you in a few. Okay, everybody, we are back. It is 8:02. So if you didn't set an alarm or something, okay, it's time to get back. Anyways, I am still a little bit distracted. We have some people running laps through the apartment upstairs, playing a game that I like to call Night Horse. Just general evening galloping up there. So anyways, okay, we are ready to get back. We have 4 more readers. So let's everybody give a big round of applause to our next reader, Rachel Silvert.
Hello. Oh, there we are. Hi. All right, everybody. This one is called Roundabouts. It's always on the days that you're running late for work that you find yourself stuck behind some asshole driver. The days when you happen to click snooze on each of the 3 alarms you set on your phone last night, because who owns a clock radio anymore? Am I right? 6:30, time to wake up. Snooze. 6:45, you really want to wake up now, Rachel. Snooze. 7 o'clock, you're going to be late. Snooze. 7:05, shit. Or maybe the days when you only snoozed the once, gosh, but then stopped by the coffee shop on the corner before heading towards the highway because though an adult you may legally be, your fridge is empty and your coffee maker utterly barren. You know, those days. Don't ask me why, it's just a rule. I like rules. And after 3 decades of life on this planet, I have come to mostly accept this about myself. I like having a sense of what is the right choice and what is the wrong choice. Heaven help the person who tries to tell me which is which before I have the chance to make that determination myself, but at the end of the day, I like knowing what to do. A few weeks into 3rd grade, Danny, the new kid in our class, looked me up and down. "You're such a Poindexter," he shouted his appraisal to the room. Poindexter? I had never heard this word before, never read it in any book. And I had read a lot of books. I'm not a Poindexter. When someone calls you a name in 3rd grade, you deny it. It's a rule. Danny pushed his ginger curls out of his face. "Yes, you are. You wear glasses." Danny also wore glasses. "You're such a Poindexter." Whatever. Intellectually, I knew this word was meant to hurt me. I was, after all, being teased. But if I'm being honest, I liked it. Poindexter. I'd roll it around in my mouth, tasting every syllable as it melted into my psyche. Poindexter. The word felt interesting. Way more interesting than I'd ever felt before. No longer invisible, Rachel the Poindexter with her taupe round glasses and armful of books stood out. It didn't occur to me until many years later to look up the definition. The Oxford English Dictionary, by way of google.com, defines a Poindexter as a boringly studious and socially inept person. Danny might have been onto something. Rule. If someone is using a word you don't understand, you should look it up. By the time I got to the end of middle school, the magic of being the de facto teacher's pet had worn off, and I was no longer the, "Actually, Miss Substitute, we're supposed to have a quiz today and then start chapter 12, kid." No. 8th grade, Rachel kept her mouth shut and let the classmates do their thing. I could read chapter 12 on my own. And what would happen if we didn't take that quiz today, really? Who was it harming? Apart from the poor substitute teacher, of course, and it would be years before that particular streak of karma would come back to kick my ass. "At least I don't correct you guys in front of the sub anymore," I'd shrug to my friends. I was growing. Rule. It's important to grow. Somewhere around age 16, I discovered that watching rated R movies underage was possible, and sometimes driving after curfew was necessary. Rule. Some rules are stupid. I had been a resident assistant for 3 semesters when one day I found my resident Charles holding a kitchen torch in the lounge. There was a strict no fire policy in the dorms, a rule I had upheld many times after finding lit candles and incense meant to cover up the smell of pot in various dorm rooms. Fire plus college kid equals disaster, after all. What's going on here? I looked past Charles to the white small dishes laid out on the kitchen table. Just making creme brulee, Charles smiled sweetly. I took a breath. Here's how it's going to go. I'm going to turn around for 1 minute. When I turn back, one of those will be mine. I nodded towards the desserts. And then we'll never speak of this again. Rule. Some rules are stupid. It was my first shift working at a restaurant. My trainer turned his head over his left shoulder, hand perched precisely on his hip, and simpered, you also can't put your shift meal in a to-go box. Gotta eat it here. Rule. Some rules are really, really stupid, and I don't follow those. A good rule helps you know what is right and what is wrong. It helps ensure other people, and maybe even oneself, that they are safe and happy. If it doesn't do that, it's probably stupid. Rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Done. Rule. If you text him back too quickly, you'll come off as desperate. That's a dumb rule. Don't do that. Rule. Never send emotionally charged emails. College Rachel wishes we'd followed that one. Rule. Obey every traffic law. Okay, look, I have been known to speed. I have paid my fair share of thoroughly avoidable speeding tickets and parking tickets. I'm not about to throw a rock in this particular glass house. But for the most part, I'm a good driver. I've only ever packed 8 teenagers into a 5-seat sedan once. Okay, maybe twice. My point is, I understand I only have so many legs to stand on when I tell you there is no more assholic of a driver than the one who turns the wrong way around a roundabout. I don't mean big, multi-lane having traffic light dotted, basically just a curvy intersection roundabout. No, I'm talking about the little neighborhood trying to get people to not go crazy fast down a side street roundabout. A circle in the square. Rule. The day you're running late for work is the day you will encounter an asshole driver. I was late for work. Doesn't matter why. Cheddar biscuit crumbs dotted my scarf as I bit into my breakfast, and I carefully nestled the steering wheel between my knees so that I could swat the crumbs away before returning my left hand to the 7. I was a block away from the neighborhood roundabout when a white SUV turned onto the street in front of me. I scanned my eyes over the flawless chrome bumper and dirt-free hatchback, and as we each slowed down in advance of the intersection, I suddenly knew. In my soul, they were going to turn left instead of go right around the circle. I mean, they had vanity plates. Of course they'd turn left. Don't do it. I tightened my grip at the bottom left of my steering wheel and scarfed down another bite of egg and vaguely cheddar cheese. They didn't hear me. And I, the reformed Poindexter, the girl who painstakingly learned to let people do their thing, provided they don't hurt people in the process, sat there fuming at a complete stranger who would never know me. I would never know them, and I'm sure they loved their children, but in that moment, I despised them because they were wrong. A brief toot from the car behind me shook me out of my rage-induced stupor. I flicked the turning signal left and started to drive right around the roundabout. You know, the way you're supposed to do it. Breakfast sandwich held aloft, I deftly cranked the steering wheel with my left hand, slowly driving counterclockwise around the circle to get to my left. Again, the way you're supposed to do it. Honk! I slammed on my brakes as the driver in the car that had been behind me laid on his horn. He was stopped on the other side of the roundabout, mid-left turn. What the fuck are you doing? He shouted out his window, his face an apoplectic purple. Excuse you, jackass. I took one last bite of biscuit. I'm right. You're wrong. It's a rule. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Let's give her a round of applause. That was wonderful. I mean, egregious, you know, to go the wrong way during roundabout, but I think that, no offense, everybody, feels like a Midwest thing. Now I feel like I've really made a lot of people upset, but I've only ever seen that here. Okay. Anyways, moving on. No offense again. Okay. We got our next reader. Let's please give it up for Sarah Naiman.
Fortunately, I'm from the West Coast, so that roundabout comment doesn't apply to me. Hi, thank you for being here, everybody. Okay, the year is 2001. I'm in the 6th grade. I'm a 10-year-old quivering ball of fear who still sleeps on my parents' bedroom floor every night. It's a gray afternoon. Everyone is occupied with one thing or another throughout the house, and I'm where I can always be found, holding my tuna sandwich in front of the TV. I'm no fool. I'm not surfing for any old show. It's a weekend and we have cable. There are movies to be found. Usually I'm drawn to something animal-centric like an Air Bud or a Homeward Bound, or something with the Olsen twins, or an Ernest Goes Somewhere Wildly Inappropriate for an adult white male. Something light and simple to pass the time. So what could possibly have made me settle on The Sixth Sense? I'll never know. While for a 10-year-old, the movie on the whole is pretty damaging, the scene that ruined my life was about halfway through the film. Haley Joel Osment is in some dead kid's bedroom looking around at a menagerie of what we can only assume are heavily cursed dolls. And I can't remember why he's in there since I've never been able to rewatch the movie. But he's stepping softly across the carpet past the lavender twin-size bed when, oh my God, kill me now, out of absolutely fucking nowhere, Ghost Misha Barton's arm shoots out and grabs Haley's milky little ankle. Haley and I both gasp in unison. We whimper and tremble as we watch sunken-eyed Ghost Misha Barton slide us some shitty old box from the portal to hell located directly under her childhood bed. I was changed forever. To this day, I don't dare let my ankle get closer than 2 feet away from any bed, the standard length of one ghost child's arm. When I'm getting into bed at night, I get as close as I can, and to cover the remaining distance, I jump. Or let's call it a leap. Leaping is daintier, more like a deer than a kangaroo. This 2-foot policy applies to all of my limbs. For example, when a sock or a book or something falls down beside the bed, I just have to pretend like whatever it was never existed. I can't reach down to grab it. That's an obvious trap. I have to wait until morning when I can, at a safe distance, crouch down, look underneath, and make sure Misha isn't there waiting for me. We live lives guided by our own panic. Our behaviors and our daily routines are a direct product of our collective fears, past and present. I always thought I was alone in this, just a scared kid that grew into a scared, taller person. But on a daily basis, I see people doing things, bizarre, hilarious things that are just as strange or stranger than leaping into a bed. Like when my partner presses the off button on the oven every time we leave the house and every night before we go to bed, even if we haven't used the oven that day. Or when my sister and I are gossiping about someone and she checks her phone to make sure she hasn't butt dialed that person, even if neither of us have had contact with them in years. Or when my partner warned me gravely not to leave my book of CDs on the seat of my car because someone would surely break in to steal them. Clearly a fear he's been holding on to since the 90s, because today CDs are nearly obsolete and you can't pay someone to take them off your hands. Also, I drive an all-black 2001 Toyota Camry that doesn't have hubcaps. The only reason someone would want to break into my car is because it looks like I sell drugs out of the trunk. There are fears we grow out of, fears we grow into, and fears that grow with us. As a kid, outside of Misha Barton, I was mainly afraid of ghosts, monsters, and aliens. And though these all do still pose a threat to my serenity, today my top fears are being murdered, cellulite, developing a degenerative disease, and teenagers. These dictate everything I do. I never leave the house without pepper spray. I exercise daily, eat healthy, and I try to do activities that keep my brain sharp. And most importantly, I know exactly what bus routes to avoid when the local high schools get out, because a teenager is just a child's mind encased in an adult-sized body that's unable to access empathy or regret, and I will not be caught dead on a bus with a whole herd of them. So yes, I would rather walk a mile down Ashland Avenue to get home instead of taking the bus on a weekday afternoon, no matter the weather. My Misha Barton secret finally came out in college when my then boyfriend and I were on a vacation in Palm Springs. Until this trip, we had never slept in a bed that wasn't directly on the floor. Mine because I'm wary and well-trained, his because he was your standard college boy who didn't even own a bed spring and had patio furniture in the living room. We'd spent the majority of our first day drunk, sunburned, and horny beside some swim-up bar. Finally, getting into bed that night in a toasty haze, completely unaware of myself, I leapt into the bed, probably while uttering a small yelp, which was not uncommon. I snuggled in casually when all of a sudden he asked, "What was that?" Still not realizing anything out of the ordinary had happened, I replied, "What was what?" "You just jumped like 3 feet into the air. What was that for?" he asked, reasonably confused. Oh shit, I thought. To be cute, I said, not wanting to appear in any way abnormal, another major fear at the time. But the jig was up. I'd been caught right in midair. There's a lot of bullshit to be scared of out there, and I've probably been afraid of all of it at one time or another. Does being hyper afraid of things alter our lives in positive ways? Yes, sure. Eating healthy and working out are good for you when whether you're motivated by fear or not. I like to think that every time I jump into bed, it's just a little extra workout for my thighs, thus combating cellulite while simultaneously dodging Misha's waiting hand. And did I accidentally leave the burner on one time so that my partner's compulsion to constantly click off the stove saved our entire apartment complex? Sure, I guess. All I have to say is be scared, be weird, be proud, make sure your stove is off, and avoid the 9 Ashland bus at 3 p.m. on weekdays at all costs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Let's please give her a round of applause. Wow, I think a lot of us could really relate to that piece, mainly about the teens. I mean, I was absolutely harassed by a bunch of teens about my shorts not too long ago, about 3 years ago when I was 30, on the bus. So, avoid teens at all costs. That's a pretty good life lesson. Anyways, that was great. Let's please, welcome our next reader, Ms. Shadi Vasugi.
That was great. That was a great pronunciation. Okay, hold on. All right. Go, motherfucker, go! I'm at a crosswalk and a car has just pulled up and wants to make a turn in front of me. I wave for them to proceed. They wave back, ushering me to go ahead. Fine. I start to cross, but then they start pulling forward, so I halt to a stop. Then they stop. I shake my head side to side. Oh my God, go! I gave you a gift, and now you're rejecting my gift by giving me a gift, and I don't even know you? I didn't ask for this. My usual crossing speed is 10 seconds, but with the addition of my luggage, it'll be 15. Though it has been proven that cars are faster than people, the driver will not budge. Inefficient niceness, I call it. I proceed to cross, and my suitcase trips on a rock like a toddler, pulling my arm backwards into a position that it's never been in. And I have to use all my weight to thrust the suitcase back on track. See? See what you've done, lady? Now we're all late. I huff and puff all the way to the 92 Foster bus towards the Blue Line train station. I arrive at O'Hare Airport 2 hours and 57 minutes before my flight. I check in, send my luggage off, and before I get into the security line, I take 5 minutes to prep. I pull aside to a bench, take out my quart-sized plastic bag, cell phone, ID, and boarding pass. I chug my water until I choke, take off my necklace and belt, and stuff it into my backpack. Now, I'm ready to go stand in line for 20 minutes. At 10 minutes, I untie my shoes. At 5 minutes, I take my laptop out. 1 minute, shoes are off. 30 seconds, I'm grabbing bins. 5 seconds, places everybody, it's showtime. Boom! I place the 2 bins on the belt. Bam! Slam down my backpack ahead of the bins. I want that to come out first. Bop! Laptop in the first bin. I want that to come out last. Thwack! My shoes and my toiletry bag I stashed snugly in the second bin. Sweatshirt, I already stuffed it in my backpack. I mean, I'm zooming. I can't believe I haven't received a compliment from the TSA agent. Oh my God, wow, this person in front of me forgot their belt was on? Beep, beep, motherfucker. Oh my God, now they just left their stuff on the conveyor belt? Dude, you gotta stay with it until it's in the tube thing. The TSA agent looks at me and I shake my head, a knowing shake. People, am I right? He doesn't like that. I step up to the scanning machine and I align my feet perfectly on that yellow shoe painting on the floor. And I lift up my hands just right. You're good, the TSA agent says. I know, I think. I quickly grab my things, power walk to the bench, slip my ID into my wallet, ticket inside the front pocket of my backpack, sweatshirt on, shoes freaking tight, tight. Okay, only 2.5 more hours until takeoff. Perfect. I wander aimlessly through the terminals, bored as hell. Some would say I didn't need to get to the airport that early, that arriving 3 hours before boarding is actually useless and unproductive, that perhaps it's the illusion of efficiency I am quite adept at. And to them I say, I don't have time for this conversation, I'm gonna be late. I fly into San Jose, California, and the first thing I do when the plane hits the tarmac is turn my phone on and text my mom and dad. Just landed, which is followed by a barrage of texts from them both. Dad is coming to get you, Han. Heart emoji, prayer hands, flower, explosions, explosions, accidental sad face. I'm coming to get you. Are you still on tarmac? Do you have luggage? Text me your baggage claim. Call me when you have your luggage. Most people ask you to call them so they can locate you outside of baggage claim, but my dad makes us locate him. The plane stops taxiing and the lights come on. You hear sounds of unbuckling, big yawns, and phone calls. Everyone is getting prepped to exit when I notice that this really, really old man in the aisle in front of me isn't doing anything. This dinosaur better start packing up now or else we're all gonna be super, super late for stuff. We are waiting for the door to open and I'm on the edge of my seat because I already have my backpack on and there's no space for me anymore. Yeah, I look dumb as hell, but maybe this will get the message across to old Pops over there. Passengers exit in order, and to my surprise, the line is moving along swiftly, until, of course, we reach this old bag of dust who might as well have stood outside and let the wind blow him to California. His seatmate gently taps him on his fragile shoulder. Sorry, but I think it's our turn. Oh, I apologize, my dear. I was miles away. Yeah, miles away, as in another galaxy. I attempt to share a knowing glance with his seatmate. People, am I right? She doesn't like that. I head to the restroom and I text my dad. Still on tarmac, we are taxiing. That saves me some time to have a more relaxed restroom visit. I take out my toiletry bag and set up on a counter. I brush my hair, put on some concealer, eyeliner, mascara, and a rose-colored tinted chapstick that smells like Ariana Grande's body. I douse myself in Viktor and Rolf Flower Bomb perfume. The women coming and going next to me are surely thinking that I'm going to go meet a lover or a new beau. Nope, just getting hot for my dad. I take one last look in the mirror. Well, at least he thinks I'm funny. I arrive at baggage claim and text him, just got off plane, walking to baggage claim now. Since I spent about 20 minutes getting dolled up for daddy, my suitcase has already arrived and has been going in circles on the conveyor belt like a lost toddler in Sears. Are you my mommy? Aw, yes. I head to the curb outside and man, it is hot. My upper lip and nose start perspiring, fresh makeup dripping down my chin. I wipe it gently and it feels prickly. Oh shit, I forgot to pluck my chin. I call my dad. Are you outside? Yes. Is it crowded? Yeah, I guess it's pretty. Walk to the end of the curb and cross the street to the center lane. Stand where the ride share, where the Ubers come and go. Go to that stand, the second stand. Not the first one. Yeah, the second stand, but the second one. Yeah, I know where that is. I'll see you there. 2 minutes. He hangs up. I'm trying to place myself in a location where his car can pull up easily. While I wait, I don't just stand in one spot. Oh, no. I'm moving. I'm doing the Heisman all up and down that curb, trying to stay open. I see my dad roll up in his big white Range Rover. I point to an open space in front of me and he shoots me a thumbs up. He's smiling, the biggest smile anyone has ever seen. His energy is warm and inviting. He glides out of the driver's seat and he's wearing his beautiful Warby Parker glasses and his linen button up. Hi, Dad. Salam Azizam. We kiss each other on both cheeks and he grabs my luggage to put it in the trunk. Oh, that's heavy, Dad. I can do it. He throws it in anyway. Don't you want to put your backpack in there? I don't, but I panic. Oh, yeah, good call. I go to close the trunk, but he stops me. No. He presses a button and it closes on its own. I get into the passenger seat and he attempts to pull out of the lane back into traffic. He jerks his head, hits the gas pedal hard, and then slams on the brakes. He curses at the folks that don't know how to drive. I shake my head. People, am I right? He likes that. How was your flight, Azizam? I gleefully tell him about the man who kept beeping and bopping through security and about the oldest man alive snailing around the plane, bringing us all down to his level. My dad has eaten it right up. I feel my head getting so big, it just might pop. We start our usual banter. We talk about family, politics, and how he thinks the best late night writers are on Seth Meyers right now. He starts telling me about a bit on a podcast he heard when all of a sudden, thwack! My father just slapped himself. I missed the exit, he says. Yikes. Growing up, my dad would often do this. He has even suggested that I slap myself in the face when I need to get it together or get on with it. I always wondered why he was so hard on himself. I don't get mad when I do something wrong. I get mad when I do something stupid, he would always say. His smile drops to a frown and he presses a button on the steering wheel. Siri, call Mariam Vusuri. Calling Mariam Vusuri. Siri just learned Farsi, he jokes. At this point, I've been in the car for about 10 minutes and my asshole has tightened and released a good 20 times, way more than it did on the plane. The plane had turbulence, but what's worse, feeling like you're gonna die or not knowing if your dad is in a good or bad mood? Because you never know. One minute you could be laughing about a comedian he heard on Mark Maron's podcast. The next, he's self-flagellating because we now have to take the long way home. Bale, Sia John. My mom picks up the phone, always sounding like her phone is at the top of a set of stairs. Do we have a plan for lunch? We have khoresh kaimet. Do we have rice? We have a little bit. Can you please make more? Her breathing shifts. She's stressed. Can you just pick up kebab from Negin? She asks. Okay, Azizam Basha, don't worry about it. Merci, Sia John. She is relieved. She always wants to take the easy route, my dad says. Yeah, she's probably just tired, Dad. She doesn't plan ahead. She's different. Later that evening, I help him prep dinner. How do you want this onion chopped? I ask. Just dice it, however you do it is fine, he says. My knife hits the peel, and I begin to slowly chop. The pungent smell of organic California onion seeps into my nostrils, but the sharp whiff of onion stench is no match for the Giorgio Armani cologne wafting into my nose. Oh God, he's behind me. My neck and pits start to sweat. No, not like that. He grabs the knife out of my hand. This is the right way to chop an onion. He hands the knife back to me and I start again. The best part about being in charge of the onions is you can quietly cry from anxiety and blame it on a vegetable. I feel my dad watching me like I'm about to take my first steps. Fast, don't overthink it. Just take the, Dad? Stop. What? I'm not like you. He stops and stares at his baby girl. Okay, Bebarshin, I get it. His frown lifts into a smile, and I watch my father walk away, and immediately my asshole releases the biggest fart of all time. 5 days later, I return to Chicago, and I'm excitedly rushing home to see my partner and my dog. I lug my bag behind me and reach a crosswalk. A car pulls up and wants to make a turn. I stop and gesture for her to go ahead. She waves for me to go. No, you. A bit of a standstill ensues. We both chuckle. Please go ahead, she gestures. As I cross, I mouth, thank you. She mouths back, you're welcome. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Shadi. Let's everybody give her a big round of applause. That was so funny. That you can smell your dad before you see him. That is great. Okay, so we have our last reader of the evening. Closing us out is Tim Felton.
I can't I can't turn my video on because it's been disabled because I accidentally did it twice already. It says the host needs to do it.
Oh no, maybe Sarah.
Cool. We got
Oh, you
it.
got it.
I'm
All right,
on
great.
now. Okay.
Awesome.
I'm so sorry about that. Thanks so much to everybody, and so fun so far. Sorry, Shadi, for all of a sudden being in your piece a couple times. Here we go. My dad had driven me the 2.5 hours to IU in our 2000 Toyota Camry, our family's first ever new car. So I knew this moment was as special for him as it was for me. I was a freshman taking my first few baby steps toward independence and adulthood. My dad and I had a real cookie cutter father-son dynamic. We never hesitated to say I love you, and we always kissed on the mouth. We're a mouth-kissing family. I kiss my aunts on the mouth. My mother kisses my spouse and my friends on the mouth. Your body may be telling you this is not normal, but I assure you it is. I grabbed my last bag out of the back seat and said, okay. I closed the door and bent down to the driver's side window. I love you. I love you too, my dad replied. And for the first time in my life, coolly turned his head, offering me his cheek instead of those soft flesh pillows nestled beneath his mustache. My father surely had his reasons for offering me that prickly, flat, non-reciprocating cheek. Was he concerned that some other college kids were watching? Because this is college, Dad, the place more or less sanctioned for experimenting. There's no way a father-son goodbye peck would have been the weirdest thing happening on the quad that day. Perhaps it was a reaction to my attachment issues growing up, which may have been a lot to deal with. For a period of time during my high school years, my mother taught a night class at the local college. On many of these nights, I would enter my parents' bedroom without regard, interrupting my dad's sacred evening ritual. Falling asleep to Sports Center while propped up in bed, head hinged back, glasses on, mouth wide and pointing to the heavens, lit only by the yellow glow of the bedside lamp. He looked like a Caravaggio painting. He looked so peaceful. He could be dead. He could be, oh my God, is he dead? Before I had a chance to initiate my first responder training, are you okay? Are you okay? Somebody get help. I need help over here. You, call 911. He would erupt in a snort that shook the walls, but assured me he was very much alive. He was gathering the Sports Center commentary in through his gaping mouth and ingesting it, only to be farted out through his saggy white briefs the next morning while shuffling around the kitchen, packing our school lunches. What a dad. After I had paced through his bedroom a few times, he'd wake. I'd broken the warm beam of contentedness and calm that passed back and forth between the TV and my dad. Once in the land of the living, he'd reluctantly say, "What's wrong?" I knew I'd break him. How many full body sighs can one person endure? Nothing. Just wondering when Mom will be home. For a period of time during my high school years, my mom taught a night class at the local college. She arrived home around the same time every week. It was predictable, as was my worrying. Had she been in a terrible car accident? Was there a carbon monoxide leak in the classroom, leaving cadavers strewn about the room like an accidental Jonestown? Had she been attacked in the parking lot by a former student turned serial killer who was obsessed with her? She'll be home when she's finished with class. I know, but I'm just worried. My father let out a sigh of his own this time and looked at me, accessing the extra stores of patience he seemed to keep tucked within his belly, and calmly replied, "What good is worrying gonna do?" My father, ever practical, and me, ever emotional, doing our dance, the lips and the cheek. In this debate, to worry or not, my father and I were not a good match. He's a beanbag chair of a person, flexible enough, likely to remain in the shape he takes when tossed on the floor, and only noisy when moving or changing is reluctantly required. He had so little worry in his bones that on long road trips to visit our grandparents, he would often park our minivan on the shoulder of I-70 in the middle of the night in the mountains of West Virginia to sleep. 18-wheelers roaring by, shaking our minuscule van, smelling of hot rubber as their brakes struggled against the steep grades of the Appalachian passes. If all of that was a teensy bit concerning for my father, he would pull into a rest stop. I, on the other hand, was more like a wooden chair with a seat made of wicker where cushions should be. I was loud and creaky and needed constant maintenance, and most of the time the wicker was busted all the way through, leaving only the edge of the seat for sitting. In the middle of the night at a rest stop at what might as well have been Deliverance County, West Virginia, while my dad and the rest of my family slept soundly, I was on high alert, quite aware that we were a serial killer's wet dream. Family of 7 asleep in a minivan at a vacant rest stop, surrounded by nothing but hollers and dark woods. One young kid, conscious enough to witness the horror, but too scared to say anything. My father seemed unaware of these dangers. After all, beanbag chairs aren't designed for vigilance. As my unaccompanied lips hung in the air, suspended in the liminal space between the 2000 Toyota Camry and the independence of college life, everything was changing for me in a way that needed unpacking. But for my dad, it was just a passing moment, one isolated decision. Here, son, press those lips up against this nondescript part of my body where my 50-year-old thinning skin is draped loosely over my bones. How I envied my dad's ability to be present and patient in every moment. Even as a young kid, I tried to learn this art from my dad. I observed the skill and expertise as my dad sat around a table full of food long after the meal was done and turned grazing into a passion project. I learned the importance of sitting in the kitchen and letting your mother fuss over you, make food for you, pull every conceivable leftover out of the fridge for you, even if it was 3 a.m. and you just arrived after an 11-hour car ride. Grandma Felton would answer the door sleepily in her long muumuu, or the Italian-American equivalent, sporting a pale flower design and worn thin. As the rest of my family collapsed into their beds, my dad and I would sit at the kitchen table while Grandma would make 20-plus trips back and forth to the fridge. You want me to warm up some lasagna, Johnny? I'm fine, Ma. Here, have some pickles. Want some ham salad? Egg salad? Ma, I'm fine. Somehow there was never a dirty dish in sight, despite the amount of food on hand at all times and the fact that she never used her dishwasher. It had been repurposed for mail and other documents as her other filing cabinet. Here, Johnny, you love nut roll. Want some cheese, Timmy? How about some meatballs? I have spaghetti. Let me make you a turkey sandwich. Juice? Coffee? I got some gobs at the Giant Eagle. Go ahead, have one, Johnny. Water? Eventually, we'd settle on a ham salad sandwich, pickled beets, some nut roll, and a gob. The perfect choice for 3 a.m. I couldn't have named it at age 7, but now looking back, I see how he showed his love by not rushing, by being with you. As an adolescent, my father and I developed some sacred traditions of our own, like weekend afternoons watching football. Our cool, dark basement, that scratchy gray couch, rays of sunlight moving across the floor as the day passed while the football and snacks carried on. Snyder's honey mustard and onion pretzel nibblers, Dr. Fizz or Diet Dr. Fizz, lunch meat sandwiches, and bread and butter pickles. The two of us on the couch for some classic father-son bonding, watching the old pigskin and cuddling. Can cuddling be one-sided? If so, then yes, we were cuddling. I'd be rubbing the buzzed hair around the sides of his bald head, stuffing my cold feet under his big body and laying on his belly as we rooted for the Fighting Irish or Pittsburgh Steelers. The continuous hum of the TV was our playlist as one game gave way to the next and eventually golf. As an anxious person, these were the most relaxing afternoons in my entire life. Me squeezing the top of his bald head to make it look like a brain, and him trying desperately to enjoy the game. I love my dad, and he loves me. We just have different ways of expressing it. When I was young, I loved to explore his cavernous belly button while trying to double as a comfy throw blanket. He raised me, fed me, and kept me safe for 38 years. I, while at a crowded beach, helped clear the gigantic recurring blackhead he had on his back. He came into my bedroom when he heard me crying after a breakup my junior year of high school. He didn't have much to say, but he sat there with his arm around me and let me cry, and that was plenty. His presence reassuring me that it will eventually be okay. As I watched the 2000 Toyota Camry pull away from my dorm onto 3rd Street, I couldn't yet understand what it meant that John Edward Felton III is a person with a life beyond being my dad. But now, as a full-sized adult and a father myself, I love the thought of him speeding down Highway 37 on his way home. Another kid successfully off into the world, figuring out what it means to be an adult. He's got the windows down, Billy Joel blaring on the radio, singing along in that breathy falsetto usually reserved for midnight mass, letting his bald head freely feel the wind and thinking, I wonder if that Dairy Queen in Owensville is open. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tim. Let's all give him a round of applause. Wow, beanbag chair dad. That, I think we can all picture that kind of dad. That is wonderful. And let's all give another round of applause for all of our readers tonight. Everybody did such a good job. I'm so, so proud. If you liked what you saw and you're curious about how to do it, I am offering another class next month. The same one, writing and reading the humorous personal narrative. So it always culminates in a class show, just like this one. So if you're interested, check out our website, tartleattheduke.com. All details will be there. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. This was great. We have a live show next week, our regularly scheduled monthly Tartle show. It will be, if you're in Chicago, it'll be live in outside, safe, social distance, everything. So come to that one. You can find details again on our social media or on our website. Yeah, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.